Greetings and welcome back to Book of Shadows. In the last episode we started playing as Miss Yui, or rather we continued playing as Miss Yui, and we heard that Yoshi is actually coming after us. So now we are at the school, it's well past 7, and we get a choice to either stand at the teacher's podium or leave the room. In the last episode we actually saw what happened when you leave the room, so this time we are gonna stand at the podium and save ourselves.
よし、少しだけ先生の気分を味わっちゃえ。
I decided I had to try it. During daily cleanup and such, I'd come and gone from this spot countless times. But this was the first time I'd ever had an opportunity to just stand here and preside over the classroom.
そうか。先生からはこんな風に見えるんだ。教室なんかちょっとドキドキする。
Gaining a teacher's point of view in the most literal sense was starting to get me really fired up. It may seem silly now, but this was my stage. This was where all my dreams would play out.
私もいつか。
I began to imagine the future that awaited me. Painstakingly detailing some new piece of knowledge for students sitting attentively at their desks. Gliding chalk across the board, filling it with information to aid them in their studies.
いつか先生になれるといいな。
And there's the organ again. I was getting so excited that even I began to think my behavior was a little strange. Maybe it was the juxtaposition of these joyous, freeing visions and the prickling dread I've been feeling up until just a minute or two before. But then, in the blink of an eye, one of these two conflicting emotions completely overpowered the other. Because now we are starting to get into the horror. Suddenly my surroundings were bathed in darkness. Going stiff with shock, I stumbled back a step. My back struck the blackboard with a dull thud.
いきなり何？
Yep, and now Yoshi comes and haunts the school. I instinctively grabbed hold of the rail where the erasers sat. I felt chalk dust against my fingertips. My panicked heartbeat was making it difficult to breathe. Was this caused by the thunderstorm? If so, it sure picked a fine time to turn the lights out on me.
しかもオルガンの音。まだ響いてる。嘘なんで？停電になってるならオルガンだって鳴らないはずなのに。
Magic.
行くな！
Well, now the old woman's warning starts to make a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? Was this what the old woman was trying to warn me about? That's impossible. She was no fortune teller or psychic, as far as I was aware. How could she possibly have known this would happen? Well, how did she know your name? There are just things that don't have answers. Hell, even if she were a fortune teller or a psychic, predicting the future is the stuff of science fiction. I shook my head.
落ち着くのよ、私。音楽室の方はまだ停電になってないとか、きっとそんな理由だよ。
Actually, it doesn't, but whatever. Maybe the fuse blew or something. I curled my chalk-dusted fingers into a fist and silently tried to talk some sense into myself.
ともかく、早く校舎を出よう。
Yes, let's go. I shouldn't have been playing a teacher. I should have been in and out by now. Cursing myself a little, I fumbled my way through the darkened classroom. I'd spent so much time in here, you'd think I'd be able to find my way out. Excuse me. Find my way out of it with my eyes closed, as it were. But sadly that wasn't the case. Smashing loudly into a desk, I knocked it on its side and began tumbling after it, instinctively grabbing at other desks around me for support.
いけない。机の中身まき散らしちゃったよ。元に戻さなくちゃ。
Still fumbling around blindly, I gathered up all the scattered notes, textbooks, and writing utensils.
でも暗くて何がなんだか。もう何やってるのよ、急いでるのに。本当にドジなんだから。
Clutch? That's a strange word. And I've never heard of that. I let out a sigh. I seem to be doing that a lot lately.
と、これは教科書とノートでしょ。
I was trying to take inventory of all the things I'd knocked out on the desk, off the desk, then realized why. I might as well just stand it up and stuff it all back in.
さすがに全部を間違いなく元に戻すのは無理だな。明日ここの席の子に謝らなくちゃ。
Not that that was a particularly pleasant prospect. Explaining what I'd done wouldn't be easy, and no matter how I sugarcoated it, it would serve as a clear indication of my clumsiness. If I didn't say anything, it's not like I'd be found out, but that would be the same as lying, as far as I'm concerned, and I couldn't do that.
と、これで最後かな。
I placed my hand against the floor and swept it around, feeling for anything I might have missed. And I found something all right. Here we go.
何これ。なんだかぬるぬるして。
I'd clearly brushed my fingers across something, but I had no idea what. It was no notebook or writing implement, though, that's for sure.
机の中からなんでブニュブニュしたものが。
Oh, it wasn't in the desk, Huey. Maybe it had been on the floor all along. Yeah, probably.
なんだろうこれ。
I rubbed my sticky fingertips a bit deeper into the wet spot, then brought my hand up close to my face so I could get a better look at what was there. Wouldn't it be funny if you were to smell it and then realize that it's like diarrhea or something? Oh god, that's a horrible thought. What on earth did I just touch? Well, you're gonna see soon enough. There was a flash of lightning almost immediately joined by a roaring thunderclap. And with it, for a split second, the pitch-black classroom was lit up bright as day. And now, just take a look at the classroom. I shot to my feet, utterly mortified. In that split second, I'd gotten a very good look at my fingers, and it really did seem as if they were covered in blood. But it wasn't just my hand, no, if my peripheral vision were to be trusted, it looked like the entire classroom was stained a dark, dark crimson.
そういえば、なんとなく生臭い気がする。
Without thinking, I backed away from where I'd been crouching. I tried rationalizing what I saw. How could a whole classroom become a bloodbath like this? Did something spill? Did someone stumble in here injured? God damn it, I'm yawning so much. Did someone stumble in here injured? Well, they have lost a lot of blood if they did that.
ありえない。そんな、何よこれ。
My whole body was quaking. I fled from the classroom. Or rather, I tried to flee.
開かない。やだ。やだやだ。鍵なんてかかってなかったのに。今だって鍵はかかってないよ。それなのに。
Sorry. I pulled on the door handle again and again in a frenzy. But it won't open. I was pulling so hard it felt like my fingernails might tear loose. But it just wouldn't budge. The door is locked in place and the door won't budge.
なんでよ。
I was absent-mindedly grabbing at my hair with one hand and slammed my fist on a nearby desk with the other. This was a nightmare.
何これ。
Silence saturated the inky blackness of the room. I took several deep breaths in an effort to restrain my pounding heart.
とにかく一度落ち着かないと。そ もそもドアが開かないのだって私がこんなにパニックになってるせいかもしれないし、さっきの変な塊だってきっと何かの勘違いだよ。だってありえないじゃない、教室にあんなわけのわからないものが落ちてるだなんて。
Well, considering you saw what was there, and it was red and looked like a slaughterhouse, I think the time for rationalizing all this is over. I was certain that when I saw what it actually was come morning, it ended up being something totally random, like someone's old soda-stained gym clothes. Around the entire class? I doubt it. And did we forget that you did not see anything when it was lit up?
きっとそうだよ。そうだ、指についたのだって美術に使う絵の具かもしれないじゃない。
I wouldn't be thinking about what was on the floor. I would just be trying to get the hell out of there. My imagination was just running wild because I was panicking.
もしかしたらドアに何かが挟まってて開かないだけかもしれない。
You should try the window. I decided to check out that hypothesis by feeling my way across the door and determining if anything was jutting out from any of the cracks.
ダメだ、真っ暗で何にも見えない。
I fumbled around the gaps in the door, but I just couldn't make anything out of that way. No.
他の出口は。
No, this was the third floor. I couldn't get out of here without exiting the hallway.
今すぐ外に出たいのに。
Why isn't there a fire escape, like the window or something? Still at a loss, I noticed a sudden flash of light through the hallway window. But the glass was only translucent, so I couldn't be sure of its source. And goddammit, I really need to stop yawning, but I can't. Ah!
誰か歩いてくる。
Then there came the distinctive clomp 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 of footsteps.
そうだ、きっと用務員さんだ。
Except that it isn't. I recalled the existence of a custodian who always patrolled the school grounds. I'm sure he was probably taking a look around after the sudden power outage.
助かった。
All at once my fear-addled legs regained their strength. This nightmare would soon be over. Oh, it's just beginning, Miss Yui.
すみません。
I shouted to the custodian at the top of my lungs through the window.
すみません、閉じ込められてるんです。
I had to be sure he heard me. I shouted again. Finally, I could see the light out in the hallway again, and it seemed to be getting closer. However,
なんかこの光おかしい気がする。
perturbed, I took a step away from the window. Probably a good idea.
懐中電灯だったらもっと明るいよね。
Like the faint, unearthly glow classically attributed to spirits, was what I was thinking. I tried to stop myself from finishing that thought, however. Which means that the hallway will soon be bathed in bright blue light. Dullness aside, it also looked like it was wriggling around in a very unnatural, very unflashlight-like way.
それにこの足音。
Clump, 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 clump. 4 clumps, then a 3 or so second interval, then another 4 clumps. They were sounding in a fixed rhythm.
用務員さんじゃない。
We learned the rhythm.
明らかに変な歩き方。
The fear was back, in full force. I had to find somewhere to hide. What if I'd accidentally summoned something inhuman? I mean, whatever that was, I begged it for help. I literally invited it in.
どこか隠れるところ。
Then again, the door is locked. But I don't think that's a problem for a spirit. I need to hide, and we need to, yes, hide. Of course, wrong and ahoy when you choose the wrong one, and this is the wrong one, the supply locker. I hurriedly squeezed myself into the metal locker where the classroom cleaning supplies were kept. It was still pitch black in the room, so I really couldn't spare the time it would take to remove its contents. Instead, I just contorted myself to fit. The locker was thick with the smells of mold and varnish. I've not actually heard of that. Yeah, I've heard of that word, but I've not heard anyone say it. So I don't know. Varnish.
でもここで息を潜めていればきっと見つからないよね。
Yeah. So I waited for the footsteps to pass by and fade into the distance, signaling that it was safe to emerge. But they didn't. They came in, and you died, because you chose the wrong spot, man. Woman.
ずっとこんなところにいたらむせちゃいそうだよ。
Still, it felt a lot safer in that locker room than it did out in the room. But the footsteps weren't receding, they were just getting louder, closer, faster. By the way, that would be a pretty panic-inducing to hear, like footsteps coming like. The other thing that I would really hate is to hear like someone panting, really panically, like the one enemies in Cry of Fear, which go like. That's horrifying. And then they came to a sudden halt. They were close, just outside the locker. I peered through the ventilation holes. Amidst the utter darkness of the classroom, there wasn't a soul to be seen.
大丈夫。ここにいれば大丈夫。
I'm not sure why I believed that. Maybe because I needed to. Maybe because it was so dark, or because I felt much calmer in such a tight space, where nothing could possibly sneak up behind me. I didn't know why, and I didn't care. I just knew that, as far as I was concerned, I was safe in here. So I stood motionless and cramped, and I waited. I didn't have to wait long.
今なんか音がした。鍵がかかったような。
Suddenly apprehensive, I gently nudged the supply closet door, just to make sure it would still open for me when I wanted it to.
開かない。
Yep, this is going bad really fast. I let out a sudden yelp at this unknown voice and tried with all my might to push open the door, blocking my escape.
嘘。開かない。開けて。開けてってば。
まだ残ってるの？居残りしてた罰よ。
There was a brief moment of silence following the eerie voice's unsettling proclamation. And then, here we go. Grass crunched. The metal walls around me on all four sides began warping inward as if the supply locker had somehow been fed into a trash compactor. We are getting smushed inside the cabinet.
痛い。何？
There was no force I could imagine that should have been able to do this, but it was happening. This already confined space was steadily closing in on me.
やだ。苦しい。開けて。出して。
Grass crunched. The collapse of the locker all around me continued slowly and steadily. I could feel all manner of things pushing and cutting into my body. My vision went bright red. One of the blood vessels in my eyes probably burst from the pressure. I wasn't going to last much longer. The ventilation holes in the locker door were now pressed right up against my face, and through them I could just barely make out the figure of a person. It was the old woman from this morning. She was just standing outside the slats, staring right into my eyes. It was the last sight I would ever see as the locker finally, inevitably smashed in my skull. Crash, crunch, crack. Splat. And that'll be quite a sight for someone tomorrow as well. Or just a... just a flat supply locker with blood pouring out. Imagine that. Subsystem data, yes, let's do this. Now continue onwards. This time we hide in the teacher's podium, which is the correct choice. I hurriedly hid myself beneath the teacher's podium. I grabbed my knees, curled up, and made myself as small as I could. The footsteps continued to draw nearer and nearer. Clump, 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 clump. Little by little the sound grew louder. Every hair on my body was standing on end. I held my breath, clasped my hands together and silently prayed. Clump, 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 clump. They were close now, very, very close. Why was this happening? I couldn't make any sense of it. I just wanted it to be over. I prayed to God that it would end. Was this what the old woman was trying to warn me about? Was this all happening because I ignored her? Because I didn't take the paper doll from her? Was it because I'd heard the ghost story of Yoshi and allowed it to get to me? Or did the strange events of the day have nothing to do with what was happening to me now? I was still holding my breath. I didn't dare let even the tiniest of sounds escape and give away my position. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, tap. The consistent rhythm of the footsteps suddenly ended halfway into one of its cycles. That sounded strange. And it had ended right in front of this very classroom. There we go. I had goosebumps up and down my arms and legs. I stopped praying and clasped my hands over my mouth. I knew I'd scream if I didn't. Could this be Yoshi? Was the school legend real? All I could do was close my eyes, keep my mouth shut and hope that whoever or whatever this was would just go away. But the footstep sounds didn't start again. If this was indeed Yoshi, then she'd stopped in front of the classroom and was just standing there. I had no concept of time anymore. I stayed in my hiding spot for what was probably only a few minutes, but felt like at least an hour. Or not. I decided to carefully peek out from under the podium. I gingerly edged my head out just far enough to get a glimpse of the room, when suddenly the footsteps rang out once more. It sounded like they were heading right for me. And they might have been inside the room, I honestly couldn't tell. I scrambled back into my hiding spot and covered my mouth with both hands. This was too much for me. My breathing was coarse and erratic, and my face was a mess of tears and snot. I was inconsolable. The footsteps just wouldn't stop. What on earth were they doing? It almost seemed like they were running around in circles just to scare me. Maybe they are. Most probably they are. I mouted these words over and over again and moved my hands to my ears in vain attempt to block out this torturous sound. And as if in response, the sound changed. It was a loud, dull thud, followed by silence. No more footsteps. I'd heard that sound hundreds of times before. It was the classroom door sliding open. I peeked out, but the door was still tightly shut. How could that be? If the sound what I heard wasn't the door, then what was it? What little safety I'd felt here was pretty much gone, but to be fair, I wasn't absolutely certain the spirit had seen or heard me either. The prospect of stepping out into the open wasn't a desirable one, but I had to decide if it was better to stay here where I was, or to make a break for it. Another choice. And we save because of that. And the correct choice is to make a break for it, but we stay hidden for a wrong end.
きっとやり過ごせるよ。大丈夫。
But it only took a moment for that decision to come back and bite me. My body was suddenly weighed down. In an instant, without knowing what was happening, my fetally positioned form was essentially locked in place. It was like a boulder had fallen on top of me and was resting on my arched back. I twisted and shuffled myself around, trying to shake it off, but the more I struggled, the heavier it became. And what's more, it felt like it was slowly inching its way up toward my head, as if it were planning on dropping down in front of my face. Well, that's a pleasant thought, isn't it? Was this a person?
誰だ?
Would it be Yoshi? It was a female voice, reverberating ominously as if bubbling up from the depths of hell. I squirmed violently, desperate to throw her off of me.
皆さんで
I would... My vision went red, or at least it felt that way. Whoever was on my back had dug her razor-sharp fingernails right into my eyes. Ew. I collapsed on the spot. The pain was instantaneous and unbearable. I could no longer hold my position. I could no longer focus on anything but this agony.
悪い子にはお仕置きです
The pain shot through my head in waves. It was indescribable, unthinkable. I couldn't take any longer. My consciousness faded, and I was gone. I would never know exactly what had happened to me, but maybe I was better off that way. Well, that went pretty bad again. Ta-da! Wrong end number 3. And still got more to come. Save system data, yes. Oh, not that one. This one. Here we go. Now we choose correctly and make a break for it. Staying in one place for too long seemed like it would be inviting trouble, so I took a deep breath and reluctantly crawled out as quietly as I could. But almost immediately I felt something. Tap. Something long and thin had struck me in the back of my head. Or perhaps struck isn't the right word. There was a little force behind it, but it wasn't a hard slam. More like someone trying to get my attention. I knew I wouldn't like what I was going to see, but I had to face whatever this was, so I turned around. And there, looming over me, was...
まだ残ってるの
Yoshi. Which means she was there all along.
早く帰りなさい
A figure was peering down at me from above the podium with one emaciated wishbone-like finger extended toward my face. I recognized this person instantly, no doubt about it. This was the strange old woman who'd supposedly passed away earlier. I was scared out of my mind. I tumbled the rest of the way out from under the podium and shot to my feet. A ghost! There really was a ghost in this school. My breathing was racked and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Plowing through all the desks in my way, I ran as fast as I could toward the classroom door. But that was But that was as far as I could go.
どうしたの？
There in the open doorway was the same old woman emitting a bluish-white glow. This was the source of the light I'd seen through the window earlier. But how in the world did she get to the door before I did? I felt like I was starting to hyperventilate, and I tried as best as I could to calm my breathing as my eyes darted about the room. I needed to get out of here now, to get as far away from this place as I possibly could. I'm gonna save now, because there'll be a time limit soon, and I don't trust myself to be fast enough.
前のドアから出られないとなると、外に出るには後ろのドアから出るしか。でもそうすると廊下は前のドアにいるあの幽霊の後ろを通らないと出口には着かない。そんなの無理。でも
I bit my lip and continued scanning the room.
何かあれに対抗できるようなものがあればいいんだけど。
I didn't have time to think carefully about it. I just had to grab something. I had to sneeze there. I just have to grab something and hope for the best. There were two choices and I had to pick one on impulse before it was too late. Broom or bag of salt. Broom is the worst choice. Also, if you ran out of time, you get the same wrong end as with the broom, but just slightly different. A broom from the cleaning supply locker, that might work. Maybe I could fight her off with it, not find. Fend, not fight or find. It was a long shot, but it was better than just standing around and getting caught. どうしよう、どうしよう。When I looked over, the spirit of the old woman was holding out her hand from the other side of the doorframe. She really was trying to catch me. I wasn't just being paranoid. She was going to kill me and turn me into a ghost like her. I was convinced this had to be Yoshi, the teacher from the urban legend. I couldn't waste any more time. I darted out through the back room of the classroom into the safe end of the hall. I was running at top speed, hoping to escape behind the spirit's back. Unsurprisingly, trying to outrun a ghost proved to be a fruitless endeavor. The spirit saw me and moved at breakneck speed to intercept. Moving at intercept course. I impulsively thrust the broom out and stabbed her in the eye with it. Take that, I thought. But my moment of bravado was short-lived. The broom immediately shattered into a million pieces. If my attack accomplished anything, it just made her mad. I had the sudden sensation of someone seizing me by the throat, accompanied by an unpleasant crunching sound. God, she really did have me by the throat. I couldn't breathe. For as old and frail as she looked, she was uncommonly strong.
捕まえた。
She was actually gripping me so tightly that she'd managed to raise me off the ground. By my neck. I find your lack of faith disturbing. I could see her slender bony hand in the periphery of my vision and feel it cutting into my trachea. Was that hand really holding me in the air against my will, kicking and flailing by just the tissue and bones of my neck? I couldn't struggle anymore. I was like a puppet on a string.
あなたが鬼よ。
Ow. With a sudden crack and my field of vision shifted 90 degrees and everything turned blood red.
あらあら、私と同じね。
Twinsies! Well, that ended pretty badly for us again. Lesson number 1, don't use common objects to fight ghosts. Just doesn't work, apparently. Save system data, yes, shoot. No. Yes. There's so many things. Okay, we continue on and get the bag of salts this time. Yeah, if you don't grab the broom, the Yoshi just comes inside the room and does the same thing as that time. But if you get the bag of salt, well, let's see what happens.
前のドアでもそん何かあ
Get the salt.
これって科学の実験の時に使った塩の残りだよね。
I'd heard that salt was used in purification rituals, so it seemed like a natural choice.
よし、これを持っていこう。
Here we go. I placed the salt in my pocket as a sort of protective charm.
怖いけど行くしかない。
Yosh, here we go. When I looked over, the spirit of the old woman was holding out her hand from the other side of the door frame. She really was trying to catch me. I wasn't just being paranoid. She was going to kill me and turn me into a ghost like her. I was convinced it had to be Yoshi, the teacher from the urban legend.
やだ、そんなの。
Yes, this time we are gonna beat him. Bracing myself, I darted toward the door at the back end of the classroom. I wonder why she didn't try that door earlier. But then again, the classroom was bathed in blood, so yeah. There wasn't a moment to lose. If I didn't act fast, I probably wouldn't be able to act at all. Here we go. I threw the door open and just began running at top speed, mate. Hoping to escape behind the spirit's back. Unsurprisingly, trying to outrun a ghost proved to be a fruitless endeavor. The spirit saw me and moved at breakneck speed to intercept. In that interception course. I thrust my hand into my pocket and withdrew the bag of salt. Then threw the entire thing directly at the old woman's face. Oh god damn it, my throat is itching.
いるんだ、この隙に。
I ran down the hall as fast as my legs would carry me, briefly glancing over my shoulder and after a moment to confirm that the spirit was still writhing. I just kept on running down that dark hallway with nothing but adrenaline and mortal fear to keep me going. I reached the stairwell at the end of the hall and made a mad dash toward ground level. I was determined to get out of this building alive. Finally, still moving at top speed, I reached the window door leading outside. Luckily, the malevolent spirit hadn't caught up to me yet. It actually seemed like I might be able to escape. I might actually survive this.
やっとここまで。
I grabbed the handle and tried pulling it. And it won't open, of
やだ、
course.
やだ、開かない。なんで、どうしてここまで来て。どうして開いてよ、開いてよ。どうしよう、このままじゃまたあの化け物に。なんとかしなくちゃ、なんとか。
Oh fuck. Now we save really fast. And the correct choice is to try to smash the door open. But
仕方がない。
running somewhere else actually gives you two options more. If you break the glass, it does the same thing as this route will eventually do. But this route also has one wrong end. Or maybe I could hide somewhere and throw Yoshi off my trail. By the way, I just did that with the skin of my teeth. I had no particular destination in mind. My only thought was anywhere but here. After maybe 30 seconds, I found myself in the full second floor hallway. There was an outside corridor connecting the two buildings of the school there, and it was the first alternate escape route that came to my mound. Why? How am I even speaking? Come on. Naturally, it was walled off from the outside for safety purposes, but the wall wasn't so big that I couldn't scale it in a pinch. I didn't really want to jump from the second floor of the school, but if I had to, I was confident that I'd at least survive the fall with minimal injury.
念のため隠れよう。
I climbed the wall faster than I thought possible and dropped down to the narrow ledge on the other side. It was just wide enough to sit down. My back was to the hallway, but my location should have been completely hidden from anyone inside the school. I looked down at the muddy ground below me. I really couldn't see much though, the outside was completely dark. It was so dark that it all felt almost like the whole world had been draped in black veil. In a black
ここで
veil.
隠れて朝を待とうか。逃げててもきっといつか捕まるよ。
I opened the pen case in my pocket and pulled out the pencil I received from Tsukasa.
司くん、お願い。
Was I really treating this stuffy little pencil as a protective charm? Tsukasa said it would guarantee success on my test, not ward off evil spirits. Yeah. Still, it was better than nothing. I clutched it tightly in my hands and prayed.
私を守って。
I whispered the words so quietly that I might as well have been mouthing them. But that seemed to be all the opening that damn spirit needed. Found you. I sensed a presence on the ledge with me and was so startled that I almost fell from my perch.
やめてよ、おばあちゃん。
Oh, sorry. However, I could only sense her there. I didn't actually see her and thought for one brief moment that maybe I was letting my imagination run wild. But then I felt the horrible sensation of something coiling itself around my arm. Hi!
とはいけませんよ。
Before I knew it, a tall, shadowy figure had half emerged from the wall behind me, and she had me in her grasp. There wasn't much more of her than an indistinct flickering silhouette, but I could clearly see she had a broken neck. Was this a different apparition? Her scraggly, root-like fingers were squeezing my arm with tremendous force, pushing aside muscle and tissue and pressing right into the bone. Right on the bone.
なんなの？誰なの？
That's Yoshi.
どこに少しだから待って。
痛い。
I was shaking hysterically and tears were streaming down my face. I was absolutely convinced that I was going to die here.
離して。
I could offer no resistance, she was too strong. All I could do was plead with her.
やめて。痛いよ。
I felt like my arm would snap in two at any moment.
ずーっと一緒にいましょうね。
No thanks. I'm not good with long-lasting relationships. She wasn't just grabbing, but twisting as well. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. I couldn't think about anything else. Stopping it had become my first and only priority. I struggled violently against the spirit's grip, ultimately breaking free by throwing my body off the wall toward the unseen earth below. In the face of death, everything really does seem to slow down. I'd read somewhere that this is because the brain is sending out all kinds of distress signals or something. Slow motion or not, though, I was fully aware of my surroundings. I was cascading through the air just outside my school building. And we get another choice. And this one will determine if we live or die. Prey upon the pencil, because that's a sensible thing to do in a situation like this. If this is a dream, please let me wake up from it right now. Those were the words echoing through my head as I clutched Tsukasa's pencil tight against my bosom, like a prayer talisman. Moments later I crashed into the ground, and a horrible squelching sound echoed in my ears. My neck was... Tsukasa's pencil had pierced deep into my throat. Blood was spurting everywhere. I was practically drowning in it. I'd landed right on it, and it wasn't long before I gasped my final gasp. And we died yet again! And with that we have every wrong end from Encounter. All 5 of them. So now we shall go and save Miss Yui from this fate that we have caused her. And instead of praying to the damn pencil, which did jack shit, we are going to do something... Oh, something smart. And reach out. I was pretty sure this fall would kill me. With a controlled jump I might have been able to survive, but I was tumbling like a ragdoll. I was a goner. I couldn't even remember what you were supposed to do in a situation like this. Try to flip over, brace for impact. In one last ditch I just cannot speak today, it seems. In one last-ditch attempt at survival, I stretched out both my arms. Maybe somebody would be waiting there to grab them. Maybe somebody would save me. And somebody actually did! I honestly wasn't expecting that. Yeah, like, oh, I'm just gonna reach out. It's not like I can do anything. Oh wait, someone actually saved me. Didn't expect that. I really thought there was no hope, but then at the last second I was yanked to safety. By none other than Tsukasa.
大丈夫か？掴め、俺の腕。
I held onto his arm with all my might, and against seemingly impossible odds I was pulled in. My life was saved. Tsukasa to the rescue. Fuck yeah. This was like a scene out of some anime. Well, I wonder why that is. It shouldn't have happened, it was too convenient. But I wasn't about to complain, yeah. If you're saved, do not question it.
よく頑張ったな。
Now the question is what the hell are you doing here?
どうした司くん。
今はシノゴの言ってる場合じゃない。逃げるぞ。
Yeah, let's go, and fast, because Yoshi is coming for you, man. And woman. Tsukasa was still holding onto me tightly after coming to my rescue. Oh, sorry. He took off down the hall back into the heart of the school with me in tow.
ちくしょう、なんだよさっきのは。俺は夢でも見てるのか。
He practically spit these words as he continued running.
どうしてここに司くんが。
I tried to match his gait, and once we were a bit more in sync, I looked up at his face. He was fast. After we'd reached the end of the hall, he suddenly veered into the last classroom before the stairwell, pulling me in with him.
シシド、お前怪我はないか。
大丈夫。私はもう一人で歩けるから。
ああ、悪い。
I moved away from Tsukasa and almost immediately spilled on the ground like a house of cards.
おい、大丈夫じゃないじゃん。
そうだけど、でもすぐに。
無理すんなよ。
Tsukasa grabbed my arm to help me up. Unfortunately, it was the arm Yoshi had been twisting.
悪い。やっぱり腕怪我してるのか。
よくわかんない。でもすっごく痛いよ。焼けるみたい。
I draped my other hand over the sore spot, where I assumed there was probably one hell of a bruise. I started rubbing gently, but it didn't help at all.
そうか。じゃあ保健室ですぐに手当てした方がいいな。
でもそしたらまた。
あいつが来るって。
Just thinking about going back out there and facing Yoshi made me shudder. I couldn't believe he was even entertaining the idea. Well, you can't just stay there forever. She's gonna find you if you don't do anything.
心配すんな。もし仮にあいつが来ても俺が。
Oh, sorry.
司くん。
Tsukasa gentle reassurance actually made me forget the pain in my arm for a moment. I had to stop myself from blushing, or try to at any rate. I don't think he's gonna notice you blushing in a darkness like this.
怪我は一刻も早く手当てした方がいいって。まあどうせ先生なんかいないだろうけど、応急。
Oh, sorry again.
よし。
But yes, this is gonna be a long episode because it's so close to the end. Tsukasa offered me his hand, and I graciously took it, squeezing it tightly as he led me back out into the hallway.
司くんの手あったかい。
Despite the fact that nothing had really changed, I was still in just as much danger as I had been. The paralyzing fear I'd been feeling was gone. If it were just me, I would never have been able to do this. I would have frozen up. But with Tsukasa leading the way, I felt like I could do anything. So let us do. We will fight the fate
少し走るけど大丈夫
set
か？
before us. With my blessing, Tsukasa upped his pace significantly.
もうあいつが出てきませんように。
I prayed silently for smooth sailing as I followed Tsukasa's lead.
このまま司くんと一緒にいられれば。
I gently squeezed his hand again as if to reassure myself that he was still with me. I was starting to think maybe Yoshia was gone, maybe we'd thwarted her, but of course, just as I was thinking that, she made her presence known again.
Mm-hmm.
なんだってんだ。出てこい。
An unearthly voice reverberated through the dark corridor. I immediately drew myself into Tsukasa's back.
もっと連れてこい。
Hi. Over Tsukasa's shoulder I saw the same shadow-like spirit from before. It must have been waiting here to ambush us.
大丈夫。落ち着け。
The ghost was moaning and wavering before us. We'd never be able to get past it.
私のために。なん
Damn it, I keep
おい、
skipping.
シシド。俺があいつを引きつけるから、その隙に走って逃げる。
やだよ、一緒に逃げて。
俺には秘密兵器があるのさ。俺のばあさんからもらった形見のお守り。さっきあいつにこれを向けたら少し。
形見のお
It seems like
守り。
this was not a cute occasion to do an episode because I'm coughing and dying over here.
でも司くんやっぱり危険。
俺？まあ、なんとかなるだろう。
そんな。
待ちなさい。
We really didn't have time to be arguing. It was closing in fast. And as it did, I noticed the spirit's figure had become more defined. She was a tall young woman with her head turned sideways at a 90-degree angle. The tale of Yoshi suggests she fell down a flight of stairs, so a broken net would certainly fit.
早く走れ！
Yeah, run, Yui. Let Tsukasa handle this because he's a man. He gave my back a shove to get me started, and with no time to object, I unconsciously obliged. Tsukasa ran too, darting ahead of me for a few short moments.
おい、化け物！こっちだ！
待ちなさい。
司くん。
Tsukasa ran as close as he possibly could to get Yoshi's attention, then turned tail and began sprinting off into the opposite direction. Opposite. There
こ
we
っ
go.
ちだぞ！化け物！
Amazingly, it worked. The spirit began chasing Tsukasa, leaving me completely unobstructed.
どうしよう。私ここで一人逃げてもいいの？
Damn it! Stop coughing, but my throat itches so bad. There's spiders in there. Ugh. I was torn. On the one hand, I knew this was my best chance, but I couldn't help worrying about what would happen to Tsukasa if his charm failed. I stopped for a moment and glanced over my shoulder. He was still running, and the shadowy figure was still in hot pursuit.
司くん、お守り出して。危ないよ。
いいから行けって！ お前が逃げ切ったのを確認したら俺も逃げるからさ。
I still can't believe I fell for it, but this was right about when I realized the truth. Yes, Tsukasa did something chivalrous. Which was unfortunately a very bad thing for himself. Tsukasa had no protective charm. He just made that up so I wouldn't object too strongly to him serving as decoy while I got away.
やっぱりダメ。
Yep. I stopped in my tracks and shouted at the top of my lungs. And here is revolving door brass.
待ちなさい。ヨシエ先生。
I wasn't sure exactly what I was getting myself into, but I had to do something, and calling the spirit's name definitely seemed to have an effect.
あなたの名前知っているわよ。
おいシスター。
All at once the black figure was facing me. Though I never saw her turn around, she was flying toward me now, ignoring Tsukasa.
怖くない怖くない怖くない怖くない怖くない怖くない怖くない怖くない怖くない怖くない怖くない。
I repeated this like a sutra and stuck one hand into my pocket, grasping tightly onto the one and only item I stashed there.
お前は私を知っているのか。
私には本当にお守りがある。
Tsukasa's care, his effort, his beliefs, they were all packed in this pencil. And when you get right down to it, that's what a charm is, right? I squeezed the nubby little thing in my pocket, mentally preparing myself for the confrontation ahead. The confrontation I'd impulsively initiated.
シスター逃げろ。
逃げない。私は逃げないわ。神様、どうかお願い。
I closed my eyes, lifted my hand from my pocket, and brandished Tsukasa's pencil intently. The gauntlet had been thrown. I was putting a lot of faith in this, and I really, really hoped I hadn't made a mistake in doing so.
私は獅子の結。この学校で先生を目指しているわ。
I opened my eyes to find that the shadowy spirit Yoshie had stopped dead in her tracks. Did it work? Was Tsukasa's pencil keeping this vengeful soul at bay?
私の
Nope,
代わ
it
り
isn't.
いらない。死ね。
Suddenly I was whisked off my feet and slammed against the ceiling.
シシだー。
I could see him down below. He was staring up at me and desperately leaping. He was trying to catch me, I suppose, even though he knew he'd never reach.
司くん。
I called out to him over and over again in my mind. If he could get away, if he could survive this ordeal, then it would all have been worth it. Yoshie was drawing near, and I was helplessly pinned to the ceiling. I had no chance at all. There was no doubt in my mind that my life was over. I clung to the relief I felt at Tsukasa's safety. It was the only thing keeping me from losing my head entirely. Then all at once the situation took a complete 180. It was like a miracle.
篠崎よしえ、そこまでにせい。
Before I had any idea what was happening, I found myself bathed in a gentle light. Yeah, I didn't think we
おば
needed
あ
that.
ちゃん。
守ってやれんですまんな。せめてこれ以上邪術が拡大せぬこと。
It was the old woman who had collapsed in front of my house. She was standing down below me, enveloped in warm glow. Yoshi is going Super Saiyan. The black shadow lunged toward her, and then there was a horrific noise and the old woman was gone.
シスター。
And just like that I fell to the ground. Whatever Yoshi had done to me, the old woman must have nullified it. That must have been why she came to me this morning, and why she had come again now. I felt like I was going to faint. Tsukasa ran to my side and scantly scooped me off the ground into his arms. Yoshi's spirit was gone. She'd vanished along with the light around us now. The only sound was the pitter-patter of the raindrops on the school roof.
おい、獅子堂、獅子堂。
司くん。
I'd suffered quite a bump on the head from my fall and was decidedly disoriented. But I still had enough sense to put my arms around Tsukasa's neck.
バカ、逃げろって言ったのに。
ごめん。でも。
I wanted to protect you. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you, is what I wanted to say. But instead I just passed out in his arms. I felt as though I was waking from a long, horrible dream.
おい、大丈夫か？おい、獅子堂？
ここどこ？
本当に大丈夫か？見ればわかるだろ。学校の保健室だって。
保健室。
It occurred to me to look at my surroundings, probably something I should have done before asking about them. But in my defense, I was out cold. Beige walls, pink curtains, white beds with solid blue covers. That's not a blue cover. Oh, never mind, it is. I'm a stupid man! This was indeed the school infirmary, no doubt about it.
どうして？
どうしてもこうしても、お前があんなところで倒れてたから、ここに連れてきてやったんじゃん。
あんなところ？
おいおい、まだ具合悪いんじゃないのか？肛門だよ、肛門。
肛門に？私、そこに倒れてったの？
Sorry.
そうだけど。
私、確かに学校の中で吉江さんから逃げて。そうだ、腕を怪我して。腕、なんとも、ない？
はあ？腕？
夢だったの？そんなはずない。だって本当に痛くて死んじゃいそうだったのに。
ああ、まあなんか様子が変だけど、とにかく無事でほっとしたよ。こういうのって虫の知らせって言うんだな。なんとなく気になってお前ん家に行ったら、お前のお母さんに学校に行ったって聞いてな。そしたらあんなところに倒れてるんだもんな。
司くん、
まあとりあえず詳しい話は後で聞くからさ。
あ。
Damn it! My throat keeps itching.
司くん、言っちゃった。吉江さんのこと聞こうと思ったのに。
He's getting you a coffee all late. I do not know how to pronounce that word.
あら、獅子戸さん、目が覚めたのね。
先生。
驚いたわよ。三國くんが血相変えて私を呼びに来るんだもの。私が当直でよかったわね。
ご迷惑をおかけしてすみません。
それはいいのよ。でもあなたずいぶんうなされていたから悪い夢でも見てたんじゃない？
悪い夢？
そうよ。三國くんもすごく心配してたわよ。
そうだ。やっぱりきっと悪い夢なんだ。昼間に怖い話とか聞いちゃったし。
ともかくもう大丈夫？
はい。
そう、よかったわ。
The nurse smiled cheerfully and disappeared behind the partitioning curtain. Letting out a sigh, I laid myself down on the bed once more. It was dead silent. The rain must have let up. The only sound I heard was an occasional cough from the nurse, who was otherwise going about her business quietly.
あ、そういえばペンケース。
I thrust my hands into my pocket, not really expecting to find it, but
ちゃんと
There it
ある。
is. The pen case, complete with Tsukasa's pencil talisman inside, was present and accounted for. Which meant that
私やっぱり教室には行ったんだ。やっぱり夢じゃない。
おーい。
and there's Tsukasa again.
あ、司くんおかえり。
I was still trying to remember exact details about what happened when I unexpectedly felt something cold pressed against my cheek.
これって。
お前、うなされてただろ。汗もかいてたし、喉乾いたんじゃないかなと思ってさ。ほら、コーヒー牛乳。
ありがとう。
Tsukasa went out of his way to buy this just for me. It was a lovely gesture. How could I possibly refuse?
お前さ、明日というか、
Tsukasa's a
もう
good man.
推薦の試験だろ。何時からだ。
9時。
あと4時間か。
Really? It's 5 a.m. Really? Okay then.
無理だよ今日は。
And by the way, her mother must be pretty worried when she didn't come back as fast as he intended. I'd been put through hell on earth. Taking a test was the farthest thing from my mind. I was in tears. I had no idea why. Maybe it was because I was so relieved. So glad to be alive.
よし。なあ、シシド。起きれるか。ちょうどいいから、お前にいいもの見せてやるよ。
いいもの？
おう、そうだな。むしろ、お前には見てほしいんだ。
And we all know where he's going to take her. To that special place they talked about earlier. My nose was still running, but my heart felt a lot lighter. I no longer felt threatened by the school. I was comfortable and safe. The two of us left the nurse's office, with Tsukasa in the lead. And even though I was holding a cold coffee in my hand, I still felt warm all over. Neither of us said a thing as he led me through the empty halls. It occurred to me that when we last saw one another, I was mad at him.
ほら、シシド。着いたぞ。
ここって渡り廊下？
まあまあ、もうすぐだからちょっと待てよ。
もうすぐ？
I had no idea what I was looking for. I just kept staring at him, but his eyes were fixed on the window leading out into the walkway. As I gazed upon him in profile, I felt my heart skip a beat.
昨日のこと謝らなくちゃいけない。
Well, I'm sure that Tsukasa has already forgiven you, Yui. But I just wasn't sure what to say. I'd let my feelings get the better of me and reprimanded him for behavior that was, at least at the time, entirely reasonable. There was more to it than that, though. There was one particular reason more than any other that made it hard for me to think of the words to say here. He and I had run from Yoshi together. We escaped her wrath against insurmountable odds. And what if that wasn't all just a dream?
お、出てきたぞ。
I followed Tsukasa's pointing finger and...
朝日。すごい。すごい。
And that is really heartwarming.
俺、ここでよく夕日を眺めてるんだけどさ。朝日もいいもんだな。
And if you remember from the first game when, in one of the extra chapters where Miss Yui is speaking with Ayumi, she mentions that Tsukasa and her were watching sunrise. This is the moment she was talking about.
綺麗だよ。街がオレンジに染まっていく。
お、元気出てきたな。
こ こって司くんの言ってた例の場所だよね。
ああ、
今まで絶対に教えてくれなかったのに、どうして今日は教えてくれるの？
別に
なんとなくって。
I could think of a reason, but I didn't say anything. It just seemed kind of far-fetched to me, and if I were misinterpreting him, I'd be very embarrassed. He couldn't possibly, could he? My face felt kind of warm. I placed the sweaty cafe au lait can on my cheek and sighed softly.
どうした顔赤いぞ。
そう
まだ具合悪いんじゃないのか？
そんなことないよ。ほら、朝日が赤いせい。
ああ、なるほどな。
Boys can be so dense sometimes.
試験頑張れよ。今からすぐ戻って準備すりゃ間に合うだろ。
ありがとう。司くんのそれ好き。
え？
それとあとごめんね。
なんで謝るんだよ。
いや、昨日ほら、なんかちょっと気まずくなっちゃったし、七不思議の話して。
ああ、そんなこともあったっけ？
そんなこともって私は結構気にしてたんだけどな。
女子はほんと細かいこと気にするよな。俺は全然何とも思ってなかったのに。
そっか。
I let out another sigh and turned back toward the morning sun, stretching my arms skyward, as a sudden wave of exhaustion overcame me. The day got brighter bit by bit, and I just stood there silently trying to piece together all the jumbled thoughts rattling around in my head. I was running away from Yoshi, and Tsukasa was with me. Then I was saved by that old woman.
やっぱり夢だよね。
Or was it? As the bright rays of the sun washed over me, I felt new life and new hope welling up from within. And I finally came to terms with those horrid events. Most likely I got the pen case without incident, but then on my way back something hit my head and knocked me out. That would just be my luck.
あ、ちょっとシシド、動くなよ。
え？
そのまま。
I didn't know what he was planning to do, but he was staring right at me. It felt kind of like he was staring into my soul. And then... Slowly Tsukasa drew his face towards mine.
これって？
シシド。
嘘？何？これ？
I shut my eyes. I was ready for this. Or maybe I just didn't want to look. But the next sensation I felt wasn't quite the one I was expecting.
シシド、これ大丈夫か？
He'd grabbed my arm for some reason and was staring down at it intently.
何よ、紛らわしいな。
Ah, you thought he was going to kiss her.
やだ、何これ。
Turns out he was just concerned by the strange bruise I had apparently received, which had momentarily become visible when I raised my arms. It was right around my elbow, right where Yoshi had grabbed me in my dream.
痛そうだな。
全然痛くないけど。
けど？
なんでもないよ。
I'm gonna go quiet for a moment now. Or not yet. Giving a wry smile, I gently pulled my arm from his grip.
ねえ、司くん。
ん？
帰る前に一つお願いがあるんだ。
なんだよ。
手繋いでもいい？
手？
手ダメかな。なんでという彼の言葉にはなんとなくと答えた。そっと指先を掴んだだけの軽いものだったけど、初めて私はお互いの心がつながっているのを感じた気がして、
And there we go with
と
the
ても
scene
嬉しかったのを覚えている。
that is presented before us in all its glory. And now back to present day.
ゆい先生、ゆい先生。
Because if you don't remember, Satoshi's in Miss Yui's house while she's hallucinating because of a fever.
ゆい先生ってば。
I knew I'd heard that voice before, but who was it? Was I just dreaming again? Yes, you are. I still felt like I was holding Tsukasa's hand, though.
ゆい先生って手。
And we're back here.
やっと起きた。
あら？え？持田くん？
あら？え？
そうだよ、持田聡だよ。
I was still dazed. I had no idea what was going on. All I knew was that one of my students, Satoshi Mochida, was here and he looked concerned.
ゆい先生、いい加減手を。
え？あら！
I finally realized what he was talking about. I was holding Mochida's hand in my own and squeezing it awfully tightly.
やだ！ごめんなさい！私ったら…
Now, look at Miss Yui's arm, right above the elbow. There's the bruise that was in her dream.
いいけどさ、ゆい先生、結構握力強いんだな。
あら、そう？これでも昔はか弱く儚い美少女として巷に名を馳せたものだけど。
それどこから突っ込んでいいの？
That would actually be like me. I don't really know what to say about that.
手厳しいわね。
Mochida was a good student. He and I got along well. And we were already falling back into our usual pattern of good-natured ribbing. Except…
ちょっと待って。どうして持田くんがうちにいるの？
それさっき話したじゃん。
え？
その調子じゃ何も覚えてないんでしょ。
何も？
さっき俺の作ったおかゆ食って薬飲んでまた寝たじゃないか。その時話したのに。
Yeah, I don't think Satoshi is going to tell Miss Yui what exactly happened.
本当に綺麗さっぱり覚えてない？
全然。
笑えないよ、もう。
Mochida sighed and pointed at the table.
あれ、山崎先生からの届け物。
もしかしてわざわざそれを届けに来てくれたの？
そうだよ。そしたらゆい先生があんまりにひどい状態だったから飯作って。キッチン借りていいって言ったのはモネだから。
そっか、モネちゃんがね。
I stroked Monet's neck and he lay down contentedly on my futon. Such a pretty kitty. I was getting kind of wrapped in petting him, as I often did. I almost forgot Mochida was there until he let out a huge sigh.
ゆい先生、
Sigh, not huge sigh.
玄関の鍵は閉めないと不用心だよ。
あら、開いてた？
No, he just
今
came
回
through
ば
the
かり
window.
は開いてて助かったけど、でも今後はちゃんと閉めないとダメだからな。
Yeah, think about... Well, I actually said it. Think about what... If Sachiko would have been out there.
なんで笑うの？
持田君、私のお母さんみたいだから。
うわ、複雑。
I didn't mean to laugh. I must have seemed kind of deranged, but I could always blame it on the fever. Mochila looked at me and let out another sigh. My poor sense of humor must have been getting to him.
でもまあ、だいぶ元気になってきたみたいでよかったよ。
そうみたい。
結構寝てたもんな、ゆい先生。
そうね。確か今朝風邪でめまいがして、学校にお休みの電話をして、モネちゃんのご飯を用意して、そこから先の記憶がないのよね。
あれ、コンビニ行ったんじゃないの？
コンビニ？
うん、冷却シートと弁当があって、ほらこれ、レシートの時間、今朝になってるけど。
本当だ。
もしかしてゆい先生。うわー、もうしっかりしてくれよ。まさかパジャマで出かけたりしてないよな。
そんなことはないと思うけど。
That would be so funny if she actually did.
どうかな。笑ってごまかさない。
ごめんごめん。持田君、私のことずっと看病してくれてたの？
うん。
そう。遅くまでごめんなさいね。
It was already past 10 o'clock in the evening. I couldn't believe Mochida had been with me this whole time. I felt both guilty and grateful, and I definitely gained a new respect for him.
おかゆ、まだちょっと残ってるから、腹減ったら食べてよ。
ええ。
あとそれから、これ。
スーパーの袋？
冷蔵庫を見たら何もなかったからさ。
え？
The bag was quite heavy. Inside it was a bottle of orange juice, some bananas, canned peaches, apples, and other assorted fruits.
これ？
風邪の時ってビタミンを取るといいんだろう。それ食べて早く良くなってよ。
持田君。
That much fruit couldn't have come cheap, especially for a high schooler. I considered offering to pay him back, but decided against it. I knew he wouldn't take my money, and besides, I really appreciated the fact that he'd gone to all this trouble for me. I'd return the favor another time. If it ever seemed like he was going to be staying late after school, maybe I'd buy him a dinner. And another one fighting for Mochida's favor. And now I keep saying Mochida, even though I've called him Satoshi all this time. Though then again I call him Morishige instead of Sakutara. Or I could help him with preparation for the school festival.
じゃあ俺帰るよ。
あ、大丈夫？道わかるかしら？なんなら途中まで見送りに行くわよ。
大丈夫だよ。ゆい先生はおとなしく寝てて。まだ本調子じゃないんだし。第一、夜道を女の人一人で歩くなんて。
持田君は優しいね。そういうとこキュンとしちゃう。
あれ？そういうこと俺に言っていいの？
Not after what you did, Miss Yui.
なんで？
Mochida joked like this a lot. Usually it made him blush and get adorably embarrassed. But not today. Today he just grinned sheepishly with a mischievous glint in his eyes. I didn't quite get it. What was his angle?
司くんって誰？先生の恋人？
どうしてそれ？
ゆい先生寝てる時ずっとその人のこと呼んでたよ。うなされながら何度も 司くん司くんって。誰なんだよ。
That crafty Mochida had turned the tables on me, and how embarrassing to know that I'd been calling Tsukasa's name. Oh yeah, you did a lot more than just call Tsukasa's name.
それは
I hesitated to answer for a moment, but then figured, what the hell, why not?
司くんはね、私の初恋の人。
その様子じゃ、ゆい先生はよっぽどその人のことが好きだったんだね。
え？
だって先生さっきすごかったよ。俺のこと司って人と間違えてたでしょ。
やだ。
ゆい先生、顔赤いよ。
これは熱のせいよ、きっと。
まあいいや。そういうことにしてあげる。
あんまり大人をからかわないで。
This is actually pretty adorable banter between the two.
だってこんなゆい先生、めったに見れないからさ。
I wasn't sure he was ever going to give me the full story of all the embarrassing things I'd done in my fevered days. And maybe it was better that he didn't. Yeah, we all know that it is. Either way, I was in his debt, so he could tease me all he wanted, just this once.
やばい。そろそろ帰らないと。ゆかがカンカンだ。
お兄ちゃん、you lied!
今日はありがとね。もう暗いから気をつけて帰るのよ。
はーい。それじゃあ先生、食事をきちんととって、頑張って早く直してくれよ。
Okay, here we go.
頑張る。
ファイト
Fight!
ありがとう。いい子だな、持田くんは。いかんいかん。あの子は生徒だぞ。
Yeah, don't get too close to him. Besides, there's two more people fighting for his affection.
おいで、モネちゃん。一緒に寝よっか。会いたいな。
And I'm getting visitors. But there we go, chapter 3 encounter completed, and that was a long episode. And quite an unconventional one. In any case, in the next one we are gonna continue to chapter 4, Purgatory. So, until that time, well, Hiroshi Mono, Miyuki Sawashiro, Nobuhiko Okamoto soulful testimonies unlocked in the bonus menu. But now, I have taken too much of your time, so we save the system data and continue on in the next episode. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.